breath. Let's close our eyes and just let the day begin to wash away. And try to find that space, that little bitty flame about an inch or two below your belly button. And see if you can just hang out there for a minute. Find your center. Find that place where truth, or calm, where knowing spends its time. Breathe into that space, fill it. And then breathe out anything that's going to keep you from being present for the next 60 minutes. Begin to just let everything go, relax. Find that sense of home within your body. Within your being. Within your heart. And in your life. One more deep breath in. And slowly let it seep out. And again, one more in, last one in. And out. Beautiful. And begin to wiggle your toes and wiggle your fingers. Come back into your body if you left it. Come back into the room if you left it. And at your leisure, slowly begin to open your eyes. Beautiful. So about midway through the year of 2016, I found myself in a very dirty coffee shop in Guatemala. I want you guys to picture this. There are wooden benches all around the edges of this thing. There are sandbags for seats. And I love hippies. Let me just get that out in the open so no one emails me. But there were hippies everywhere. And there were wild dogs that were competing with the hippies to see who had more clouds of flies around them. I had just come out of 28 straight days in a pitch black room by myself. So I might have been moderately fucked in the head, but just a little bit. But one of the things I had done while in that room was written, rehearsed, and practiced what I knew was going to be the perfect TEDx talk. One of the ways I kept myself sane in there was to write it and practice it and visualize giving it to an audience, to see the standing ovation, to hear the clapping, all of it, to know that like women in the front were crying, and it was just incredible. And so I was sitting in this coffee shop, Skyping with tonight's guest, because she is my speaking coach. And she had asked me, said, okay, just give it to me exactly how you have it. Let's hear it, like whatever state it's in. And I was like, well, it's perfect. So just know that before we start. And bam, I launched into it like fully. It was, and I got to tell you guys, it was fucking gorgeous. It was probably the best theatrical performance ever performed in a filthy coffee shop in Guatemala. And I got to the end and I waited for what I knew was going to be like this sentence. I have coached thousands of people and I have never been moved like that before. And what I heard was, nah, not really feeling it. And that is my introduction, or part of my introduction, to our guest tonight, Kymberlee Weil. Kymberlee is a straight shooter to the nth degree. And what she actually challenged me after saying, not feeling it, was, you're playing safe. Why don't you go back and talk about pain? And the talk that I had given to her was about a comeback story about the '87 Mets, and it had nothing to do with pain. And I went home and I was a little bit distraught and kind of pissed and a little bit ego hurt. And I knew she was right. And so I rewrote the talk, and 3 months later, I did give it on the stage in Santa Barbara. And it was as moving as I thought it would be, because I walked off of the stage and fell into Kymberlee's arms and started sobbing uncontrollably. And she held me there for about 2 minutes until I could stand and get my shit back together and walk off of the stage. Now, why do I tell you that story? I tell you that story because it's both a testament to who you're about to hear speak tonight and who's going to be sharing your time with tonight, but it's also the power of story. And I didn't know the power of story until I met Kymberlee. I knew what story was, but I didn't know the absolute power of it. So we're here to talk about a lot of things. I know some people want to name their year. Some people want to hear about story. Some people want to hear about TEDx. But let's also set the frame, as we do every week, that this is Uncivilized Unplugged. This is my answer to, why don't you do a podcast? It's like, why don't I do it live? And why don't we let people imagine what it's like? Why don't we invite people into what happens to be both of our living rooms and allow you in and be part of just a really open, friendly conversation? A number of you have been on these before, that we didn't want this scripted. We haven't gamed this, and I haven't asked Kymberlee softball questions that she's going to hit out of the park. We just want to chat, and we're going to chat about some really important things. So before I introduce her, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Traver Bohm. I am the founder of Man Uncivilized and the Uncivilized Nation. And I get this question a lot of, what is the uncivilized men's movement? So it is my answer to the question, why are men not okay? And the real question that's underneath the one I just read you is, why are men today in so much pain? And more importantly, what can we actually do about it? So men on this call, this may not speak to you personally, but if this isn't you, it's the vast majority of men you know. You know, when I looked out in the world a couple of years ago, what I saw actually broke my heart. It was an epidemic of unexpressed pain in men, and that unexpressed pain was the basis for what I was reading splashed across the headlines every morning. Most men don't have a drinking problem or a lying problem or a being shut down problem. We have a pain problem. And I decided that instead of being part of the problem or just complaining about the problem, which I was hearing and reading every damn day, to actually create a solution to the problem. And that solution is now a worldwide, thank you Canada and Australia, movement for men who reject the two modern paradigms of masculinity. And the modern paradigms of masculinity, in my opinion, are the stoic, emotionally stunted, numb 1950s Marlboro man. Everybody get this? This is the guy who will shoot himself today due to isolation, unresolved grief, and a repulsion of all things feminine, especially women. These guys are all primal and are being told that to be a man means to not feel any pain. How many of us, we don't have to raise our hands because it's being recorded, but how many of us were raised by one of these men? How many of us know these men or even are one of these men? And the second paradigm is what I saw was a feminized, emotionally driven, sensitive new age guy, or the nice guy. The guy who's currently dying of codependence, porn addiction, and has more hurt feelings and best girlfriends than he does drive and purpose. And this is a man who's terrified of all things masculine and a guy who uses women as a way to feel okay in the world. Now, these guys are all divine masculine and are using that divinity as a way to bypass their pain. These guys actually are the ones who are most dangerous because they're the wolves in sheep's clothing. So I think, guys, listen to this. There are powerful societal forces pushing us into some degree of one of these two paradigms. And I actually had, this was fascinating. I had a sociology professor last year tell me I could choose one of the other. And that was it. There was no in between. And I told him to go fuck himself. And told him to go fuck himself, and then created a movement for men who have embraced the new paradigm, which I call the uncivilized one. This is men who have open and thorough access to their heads, their hearts, and their balls. Men who are unapologetic about their primal nature while simultaneously, though, guys, being deeply engaged in their own divine consciousness. This is a movement of men, if you look at my brand new shirt, can fight, fuck, feed, and feel. These guys are my men. Maybe they're one of your men. But enough about me. I'm going to get myself turned on if I keep talking about this. Kymberlee. With that, who is Kymberlee Weil? I would love it if you would just, like, random person walks up, who the heck are you? And why should these wonderful people listen to this amazing stuff you're about to tell them?
Wow. There's so many different answers I could offer to that question. I will answer with a short story. I live a life of adventure, and I have ever since I was a little girl. And so when I had the opportunity to work with TED back in 2002, I was brought in to create a software application for the conference to use. And this was for all the TED speakers that year and the TED attendees. And Chris Anderson had just bought the conference from Richard Saul Wurman and kind of had a different view for what he thought TED could become. And so I got involved with TED from this software perspective, and it turned out to be this huge success. It started a software company by accident. One of the people on the project, on that software project, we fell in love, and it created a husband by accident who happens to be on this call. And then it also started this by accident speaking coaching career. All of this by accident. So all of these I look at as little adventures, in my life. There's been these points in my life where I can say yes or say no, jump off the cliff or not. And every time that I've jumped, something magical happens. And so I live my life that way. And I feel like I attract adventures every corner, every day, every hour in some cases. And with this whole TED experience, it has been just that. And I would want nothing less.
I love it. I will share with everybody on this call that I have a nickname for Kymberlee. And I had to add my assistant a couple of weeks ago was like, hey, who's AP? Every time you send me a note on AP or you write Kymberlee, you say, Dear AP. And I said to him, that's my nickname for Kymberlee because when you're around Kymberlee, anything's possible. And I believe that you exude that. Like when I'm around you, I feel like I can do anything in the world. And we've had some adventures. I remember Skyping with you in the Dallas airport giving a talk, or my favorite was before the talk, guys, I didn't know what to wear. You may, if you follow these things, you may see that dressing isn't my forte. And so I would take photos in a dressing room bathroom or dressing room of a clothing store and be like, Kymberlee, should I wear this on stage? And I'd text it to her. She'd be like, no, too dark. I'm like, Kymberlee, should I wear this shirt? No, I can see your nipples.
These are the important things that go on behind the curtain.
Anyway, tell me, since I know everyone's dying to know and I want you to say it, what's this year? What did you name your year? Can you hear me?
Yes. So for me, the audio is cutting in and out. I don't know if it's just me or everyone. Yes.
Is the audio cutting in and out?
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's shaking their head. So I think we're getting the most of it. So we'll.
That should help it.
Okay. Better? So far, so good.
Okay.
So let's roll. So what did I name my year? First off, let's find out why. year. And what the heck? Like, why don't we do New Year's resolutions, or why don't we do anything else? Why do we name the year? Well, here's how it all came down. I realized that there was a point in my life where I wasn't taking risks. I know it's hard to believe, but I wasn't. There was a period of time where I was really playing it safe. And things were going great with our software company, and things were just sort of moving along well, and it was okay. We had great revenue, great clients, great friends, great family. Everything was great. So I just wasn't taking risks. And when I came to the end of the year, I realized, it's much more fun to live a life with a little risk, a little putting yourself out there. So I named my very first year, I believe that was the year of the badass, because I wasn't being a badass. I was just going along. And so the purpose for me naming my year that was not because I wanted to instantly be a badass. It was because I was naming my year based on who I wanted to become, not who I was on that day. And so this name the year concept came out of what trait, what skill, what personality do I want to take on that I don't have? But if I could make myself grow into any persona in the world, what would that be? And that year, it was the year of the badass, because I wanted to be more of that. Well, if I fast forward to the end of that first year, what happened? I took more risks than I ever had in my entire life. And magical things happened. I mean, it was transformational. It's so good that I thought, hey, there's something to this.
Yeah.
So the next year, I had another name for my year, and the next year, and then the next year, and the next year. And I've been doing this for about 5 or 6 years now. And every year I look back at what my year was, and I have become who I wanted to be. Like, for example, another year I was suffering from perfectionism. I don't know if anyone on the call can identify with this, but you don't send that email because it's not perfect. You don't raise your hand because you don't have the perfect thing to say. You don't say yes to this opportunity because your talk isn't right yet, or you don't think why would you be the speaker that they want? So it was paralyzing me. And so I named that year the year of messy. And it wasn't that I wanted to be sloppy. It was that I wanted to be and become okay with getting a little dirt under the fingernails. I wanted to be okay with, I might fuck up, but I'm going to send this anyway.
Right.
I might not be the perfect me on the perfect day giving the perfect talk, but I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give this speech. So these each year has been things to grow into. And I think 2 years ago, I felt like I needed to really take some bold moves. I wasn't taking bold moves. So I named that year, I don't know if you guys can see this. This was the year of balls on the table. And what this meant to one of my best friends had this made for me. This was a joke off of a Silicon Valley episode where one of the characters actually puts his cojones on the table in an investment meeting. And I don't recommend this. But this allowed me to think about, okay, if I was going to put my balls on the table, like what would I do in this situation? How would I respond? And so by the end of the year here again, I look back and wow, all of these pieces have really served me. So drum roll, this year, there we go. This is the year to make it more interesting.
Ooh, I love it. Tell us. Tell me more.
So this is an improv technique that I learned this past year. Mark and my husband and I are very, very heavy into improv these days. And I'm training like 3 nights a week, 3 hours a night. We perform every other Saturday. It's like I'm in this world of improv. And one of my instructors out of a class of LA, we were doing some scene work and character work. And when you do scene work, you'll have objects. You'll have objects you'll work with. And so I think I was drinking tea as like a high status person. And she was like, stop, make that more interesting. I'm like, well, how do what do I she's like, don't think, make it more interesting. And she forced me to do that. And so with your tea, you might like spill the tea all over yourself, or you might like, oh, that's too hot. Or you might, claim that this tea tastes like the chocolate of the gods. I don't know, but there's things that you can do to make that moment more interesting. And here's what happens. When you make anything more interesting, not is it only more fun for you, but it's fun for everyone around you, right? You're making podcasting more interesting, Traver. Like you're saying, yeah, I don't like this model. I'm making my own model. Here's your version of podcast. This is more interesting. Look at all the people here. We can interact, we can talk, we can take questions, we can see each other, as opposed to just listening to someone talk at us.
Right.
And so I'm going to use this filter for this entire year to challenge myself every morning. When you name your year, you want it to be something that pulls you towards it, not repels you away from it. So you should be happy to write this down in a journal every day. And be happy to challenge yourself. How can I make this call more interesting? How can I make this meeting more interesting? How can I make, I'm stuck in traffic on the freeway. How can I make this more interesting? So it's a filter that you use every day.
Beautiful. I hope everyone just takes a minute and takes all of that in. Whether you have clients, whether you have a partner, whether you live by yourself, whatever it is, you have the ability to make your life significantly more interesting. And it's on you. And Kymberlee's right. Before she actually named her own year this, her challenge to me was, what can you do for your clients that's more interesting? I was like, well, I'll do a weekly call, and I'll do a weekly Zoom call and just see what happens. And that was 6 weeks ago. And now this whole thing exists and is an entity. So listen to this stuff. And then here's my advice. Implement it, right? Implement it. That's where a lot of the gap is with people's success, is we know, like, we can read a book and then we don't do shit about it, right? Implement this. So Kymberlee, thank you so much for passing that on to everybody.
I would say, I'll add to this. It is a game changer. This is not some like, oh, you could probably do this or not. Do this. It will change you.
Agreed. Completely agreed. Do you guys, and we all know the stats, it's something like 95% of people have given up on their New Year's resolutions by Feb 1. And that to me that's what civilized people do, but that's not us. Beautiful. Let me ask you a hard question now, because I don't know the answer to this, and I've known you for a number of years. So if you don't mind, I'm going to switch gears with you and ask, what the hell is short form communication, and why should people care about it? Because I know it's your thing, and I know you, and I try not to let you know, but I'll let you know publicly that I don't really know what it is.
That's okay. Here's the deal. Everyone I work with, there's several things that we focus on, but one of the things is everyone has to have a building statement. And by a building statement, that's my term for it. It's, what are you building? In your life, in your career, what are you building? Because you need to allow people to either place themselves inside of what you're building or not, outside. And that really helps you find your tribe, your people. And so if you ask me, what am I building? I'm building an army of story samurai to affect change in our world through strategic vision and short form communications. Now, short form, I know that's a lot.
Can you say that again, please?
Okay, I'll go slow. So I'm building an army of story samurai to affect change in our world through strategic vision and short form communications.
Beautiful.
So did this statement come to me just like that? No, it did not. I worked on this and I tested every word, and you know that your building statement will evolve. And so in a year, you'll look back and you'll switch out a word or a phrase. And I used to say strategic vision and the short form talk, but my body of work has expanded beyond the short form talk. And so short form communications, you can think about it as an umbrella. And under that umbrella is short form improv, which I'm based so many of my lessons on this day. Short form story, which we all should be able to tell a story in 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. We should all have at least 1 to 10 go-to stories that you can just rattle off in that short form. And then the short form talk is that TED style talk, which is 18 minutes, 12 minutes, 10 minutes, 6 minutes. It's that short form talk, taking in many cases in the work I do, it's a very complex information or a complex topic, and we narrow it down to just the best of the best stuff, the good stuff, that you can communicate that in 10 minutes or less to affect change. That's what I'm interested in this world. I'm not interested in just talking to talk. I want to affect change on a person-to-person level and on a global level as well.
And I imagine that you think every single person needs to know this skill.
Well, yes.
Okay. So that would be everybody on this call.
Well, yes.
So even the people on this call who are probably thinking like, this doesn't really apply to me. I don't want to be a public speaker.
It's not about public speaking. It is about communications. And that's why I call it short form communications. We are humans. We communicate. If we communicate between at least one other person, there's an opportunity to communicate very succinct and short so that we can get our message across and again, affect change even in a person's day. Just by telling a story or having something light, some humor, you can change a life. You can save a life with one sentence. I've seen it happen multiple times.
Say that one more time. And I want everyone, if you're writing, stop writing. If you're fidgeting, stop fidgeting. If you're doing anything but listening, please stop and listen. Can you say that one more time, please?
You can change a life or save a life in one sentence.
Okie dokie then. Everybody get that? I just got chills, and when that shit happens, there's some serious stuff going on. Beautiful. And I completely agree with you. Can you share with people who have this question, or can you help shed some light on the question of, but I don't have anything to talk about, but nothing has happened to me. I don't have any stories. Can you just speak a little bit to that? Because I hear that a lot. Please.
Sure. I do too. In certain cases, I'll work with people who may not have aspirations to be on the TEDx stage, but they feel like they do have a message. They're not sure what it is. And even if they do have a message, they may not have stories to go with it. And here's the thing. Our life is made up of stories. Every day you have interactions, you have things that happen. Those are all mini stories. I try not to go to the market because one, my husband's a chef, so that works out for me. But I get injured at the grocery store. I don't know why. It happens. I get injured. And so every time I go to a grocery store, I come back with an injury. I don't know. It's a weird occurrence. And so there's a story there about one of my many injuries at the market, but that's also a way to not have to go shopping.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this is by design, huh?
It works out.
I injure myself every time I fold laundry and do dishes. It's crazy.
Hey,
yeah.
That can work. That can work, but that's a story. We helped my dad and stepmom find a new kitten and found a rescue kitten, which happened to be in downtown LA, which happened to be in a really bad area, which happened to be kind of a gang sort of area, and sort of not where you would kind of go for a Sunday drive with the parents, looking for this kitty, right? And so there's a story there. There's stories everywhere, every day. And it's crafting them, putting them in a way in which we love to hear them. We can follow them, and you go in, your quick hit in and out. And again, that That's how change starts, by someone relating to the story. And chances are, if you're telling a story, anything that's happened to you has happened to someone else.
And they'll relate to it.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Stories bring lessons to life too. That's another piece of it. Yeah. Because if I just tell you some facts and figures, there's some great statistics on when you're speaking and you're talking about facts and figures and you're throwing up some charts and graphs, that activates 2 regions of your brain. But when you tell stories, it activates 7 regions of your brain. And your brain just lights up. We're hardwired for story. We've been telling story longer than we've had written language.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah. Beautiful. Let's get a show of hands of anybody who doesn't think they have a story so that Kymberlee can call bullshit all over you. Oh, what do you know? Not much audience interaction tonight. Beautiful. Talk to me about the challenge people have with that thing they don't want to talk about, that thing that they don't want to share, and the power that lies within that thing, or that thing that happened to them.
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of levels here. Sometimes that thing that happened to people may not be appropriate for public consumption initially, because things need to get worked through first. Sometimes, though, by sharing that thing, it can be healing for millions. And I'll give you an example. I worked with a lady who did a TEDx talk just recently in TEDx Youngstown, Ohio. And she was a news anchor, very popular news anchor. She had some horrific health issues, got through those health issues, went out to celebrate with her husband, made a bad decision, which cost her job, and public humiliation and isolation from her family, and that it was an embarrassing time for her. And yet she was willing to get on the TEDx stage and talk about this and her experience through this. And she came out on the other side of it, bruised and scarred and bloodied, yet at the same time, her going through the fire, so to speak, with this is such a gift for others. Young people making different decisions based on hearing her story, people who it's happened to them, and just people came out of the woodwork. People she never met, didn't know, said, this happened to me too. Oh, wow. And because I know that there is hope on the other side, you've given me hope. You've given me a new lease on life. You've given me a reason to want to even go on, because some of the things and some of the topics that I work with people are really very delicate. Suicide, human trafficking, I feel like in working with so many TED speakers, I have access to this kind of temperature check on the world of what's going on in Syria, in refugee camps. I mean, just animal rights, animal issues. There's so many topics that people are now bringing forth in order to heal and help. And so what you can think of with your stories, especially if you have one of the harder ones to tell, think about this being in service of others. So you're willing to share these when the time is right, in service of others, because you want to help or heal others.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've seen some TED Talks that are the topic is real, right? And we've worked with people together with the topic is real, and it's always fascinating, the after effect that you just don't know. The email a year later, this talk saved my life.
Yes.
right? And I always tell people, you don't know the emails you don't get.
Right.
Right? How many of those are out there? That's the person that actually took the time to say it.
So true.
What is the one question you ask every TEDx speaker?
Here's where I start with every TEDx speaker or every prospective TEDx speaker, and everybody here on the call, you can all answer this. What is your core idea? And by core idea in the TED world, it's your idea worth spreading. It's your one idea that the world needs to know. And whether you ever get on a TEDx stage or a TED stage or not, I feel like it's very important for every human to be in touch with this idea. What if you could share only one idea with the rest of the world, what would that be? And this idea, you want to think of it as kind of like a sound bite. It's one sentence, not a paragraph, not a lot of ands, this happened and this happened. You know, it's just a sentence. It's a statement. It's a stake in the ground. It's what you believe to be true, no matter what. It's what you are willing to fight for, no matter what. It's something that you may say this sentence out loud and people may agree or disagree, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, TED Talks and even these core ideas, it's a person's point of view on a topic. Examples. Sir Ken Robinson is one of the most watched speakers, TED speakers of all time. And his very first TED Talk, his core idea was education is killing creativity. That's it. Short and sweet. However, if you think about that sentence, you don't normally see education and kill in the same sentence, right? So it's a play on words. It makes your brain think, do I agree with that? What does that mean? That's not true. Education is supposed to foster creativity, not kill it. How could that even be true? But it pulls you in, it draws you in, and you want to listen to the rest of the talk because you're engaged, right? You have a reaction to it one way or another. Another very popular TED Talk was Simon Sinek's very first talk he did at a TEDx event, not on the main TED stage. He did that later, but his very first talk was at TEDx Puget Sound. And his core idea was people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Now, the title of his talk was different. So I'm not talking about titles here, and I want to make this distinction because a lot of people have a misconception that titles are the same as core ideas, and usually they're not. They can be, but usually they're not. The title in the TED world is used for a different purpose. It's for search and intrigue, but the core idea is if you condense your entire talk into just one sentence, that bullseye, what would that be? And that's your core idea. If we don't have a core idea, we don't have a TED Talk. And in fact, we don't have a talk, period. I believe that every single talk that you give from now on, it has to have a core idea. It is that central place that you build your entire talk around this one sentence.
Raise your hand if your one core idea was like 7 sentences for 3 months and you kicked and screamed and said, mine's going to be different. Do we have any other TED speakers on the stage here? Yeah. I remember talking to Garrett too, who had to leave the call. And I remember specifically saying to you, like, no, you just don't get it. There's genius that flows through each one of these sentences. How do you help people go from that, or from an idea that's that big, to one sentence? Because that's got to be the challenge. You know, I hear people the same exercise. My one true set, or the core idea of my talk is this and then this and but this and it's the core chapter. How do you personally help people whittle that down?
Yeah, that's where the samurai comes in. You gotta cut and kill, and kill off the things that don't matter. And so it's about stripping it down to the most essential elements, because right after this core idea, then you can unpack it. Then you can justify it and explain it and take us very deep into this concept and into this world. But at the essence, if you had to pick up a phone and leave a message with someone and all you could say is this one sentence, what would that be? And that's what we're looking for. And so what I recommend for people to do is brainstorm. So start with a brainstorm. Don't edit yourself, because a lot of people get into that trap where, oh, it's not good, I'm not going to write it down. Just write it down. Just get a big, huge, giant sticky paper and write down ideas. And then you'll start to see patterns emerge, and you'll start to see, where you're drawn to the most. And once you can get it down to maybe 10 ideas, then start playing with ordering and sequencing of that sentence. So even back to Sir Ken Robinson's example, he could have said, instead of education is killing creativity, he could say creativity is killed by education. It has a different meaning, because now your focus is different. Your focus is on the creativity first and education second. So all of these things matter, the orders, the opposites, how you are going to bring this to life. But you think about what is the least you can say and have somebody kind of stop and go, wow, I never thought of it that way. How can you make your sentence more interesting?
Look what you just,
in a short amount of time, though, because again, people get very attached to their ideas, which is fine. You can unpack the idea right after the sentence. So right after the sentence comes, you can unpack it. What does this mean, and why does it matter? And you can go much deeper.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And I'll add this final thing is know that this is one of the hardest things to do in developing a talk of any kind, is to start here. But I will tell you, I've worked with, I don't even know hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of speakers just for the TED stage alone, not to counting my executive clients, but it's the same across the board. Once you have this idea, then the rest of the talk almost writes itself. It is so much easier to develop your talk once you have this bullseye. Otherwise, you're kind of all over the place. And as an audience, it's really hard to follow speakers who, even if they're so eloquent or so fun to watch and charismatic in their movement, if their ideas are bouncing all over the place, we don't know what to hold on to. And I'm sure all of you have been in a situation where you've heard a great speaker speak and you walked away and you said, yeah, that was a great talk. And someone said, oh, what was that about? And you have to think, well, it was a great talk. It was a great talk. Right? So we don't want that. So everyone on this call, I want to challenge you, be that interesting speaker. Be that speaker that they just can never forget. Even if it's a speaker to a party of one, your spouse or significant other, your friends, be that person that everyone is so captivated by. And it starts with the core idea.
Beautiful. Let me throw a question that just popped up about what we're talking about. It said, would you want this one idea in all talks, big and small?
Yes.
I concur.
So whether it's a keynote, my clients that I help with keynotes, it's like, okay, what's your core idea? And they're like, then I get the eye rolls. Oh, Kymberlee, really? Yes, you do. For a keynote. Yes, you do. I'm doing a 3-day workshop. Great. What's your core idea for the 3-day workshop? What? The one idea? Yes, there needs to be that bullseye idea, that central idea that we build the entire event, the entire talk around. Yes. Beautiful.
Can you share and I want to be really respectful of your time. We have about 10 more minutes I get this question all the time, and I'm not the right person to ask, is people are always asking, what's the first step to becoming either a TEDx speaker or just a public speaker in general? What's that first step?
Okay. The first step is admitting to yourself that you have an idea the world needs to hear. Because you do. We all do. Everyone does. You have more than one. You have at least one. And usually many, many more than one. And so the first step is being true to yourself. And you know, this can be hard a lot of people, even, you know, that I work with, they'll think, well, why me? This is a new idea. I haven't really done, you know, I don't have a doctorate, or I haven't done the research, or I'm not really even a speaker. I get that too. I'm not a speaker. Why should I be on the TED stage? Mm-hmm. Guess what? TED Talks are not necessarily for names that you know. TED doesn't go after the star power. No one even knew who Sir Ken Robinson was. Except for very limited circles until he got on the TEDx stage. Same for Simon Sinek, same for this person. I mean, I could just
Brene Brown.
This, right? So TED Talks are about the idea. And as a TEDx organizer, we like to say idea first, person second. So it's about the idea, and we all have them. So back to your question, I would say that step one is to know that you have an idea. Just know that you do. Mm-hmm. Okay. Next step is how can you share this idea? Mm-hmm. And where can you share this idea? Is the TED stage a right stage? You know, we need leaders desperately right now. Our world needs leaders right now. The TED stage is one of the few stages left that is not influenced by politics or financial means. Is truly purely for ideas being spread in the world. But you may have an opportunity to share your idea with local organizations who could just use a mindset shift, could just use a different perspective on a topic, on a challenge, on a problem. And that's also part of the way to get to your core idea is ask yourself, what is the problem? Not what is the solution? What is the problem? Right. Education is killing creativity. That's a problem. Then he tells us the solution within the talk. The answer is within the talk. But what is the problem? And so that's, you know, what is the problem that you see in your industry or in your life or in our world? What is that? And who needs to hear your take on the answer to that?
Everybody, again, get the first sentence she said. You have an idea. Please say it one more time if you remember it. The first thing about people, everybody having an idea worth spreading, or everybody having a story in them. Please share that. I want that crystal clear for people.
Every person on the planet has an idea worth sharing. Every single person. So, and I've been challenged with this myself. And someone will say, well, what about, you know, the homeless person doesn't have an idea? Guess what? That homeless person has amazing ideas. Mm-hmm. You know, they just haven't shared them yet, perhaps, or maybe they have. But, you know, every human has an idea that other humans could benefit from hearing.
So that would include everybody on this call.
Yes. And it's back to that one sentence can change someone's life. So why not it be you who changes someone's life?
So we're going to do a little physical exercise. I want everybody to go like this. That's who. Do I have an idea we're spreading? Yes, I do. Fuck yes. Beautiful. This is why I call her AP. Does anybody not believe this woman? Does anybody not believe that they have a story, that they have something to share, that they have the worth to do just that? Kymberlee, I could talk to you all night. I have talked to you for hours on end. How can people find you, and how can people work with you specifically? Do you have anything coming up that you can share with people of ways that they can get in the same room with you, in the same event with you? How can people be around you and benefit in all of the same ways that I have?
Sure. So the majority of my work, as I mentioned earlier, I run TEDx Santa Barbara. So I produce a TEDx event, and the rest of my year is spent training speakers to either be on a TED stage or to do that short form
Okay.
stakes talk. So I love to play when everything's on the line. I love to play when you've got a boardroom full of investors and you need to raise millions of dollars. You know, I like to play when the stakes are high. And so I work mostly one-on-one with people all year long. So someone will come to me who wants to do a TED talk someday or a TED style talk someday, and we'll engage and work together on it. Usually it's anywhere from a 3-month period together or more. Once a year, I do a live event. And I've got my live event for 2019 coming up next month. It's February 8, 9, and 10. And it's small. I keep that really small because it's very personal. I like you, I like to work with people. I like to get my hands on people so we can work on your talk. So basically, it's how to design, develop, and deliver a TEDx talk. So it's 2.5 days. At the end of it, you have your TED talk ready to go. You can apply to TEDx's all over the world and get yourself going on a stage to share your ideas. So that's February 8, 9, and 10. And so my website is Strategic Samurai. That's me.
Mark just shot me a link. I'm going to post a link, you guys, but please say the site again.
Yeah.
Just for people who are listening.
Yeah. So that's a great way. I mean, basically that's the best of my best stuff crammed into 2.5 days. So it's for people who want it all, want it fast, and want out. You know, that's a great way to do it. And then I work with people individually, so you can contact me off the website. And I also do free weekly training videos. So every week I do training on some kind of topic on speaking. So you can, there's those options too.
Beautiful. Did you guys see the link for her event in the chat? It should be there, strategicsamurai.com/workshops for people who are listening to this. I think I went to your first one of those, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Can you believe I've done 7 since then or so, 6 or 7 of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's my favorite thing I do all year. I love these workshops. I love being with people, in the same airspace. This is fantastic and wonderful, but there's just something to be said about being in a room together and just developing these talks together. It's so much fun. And the fine print is we laugh a lot at ourselves.
Yes,
we do that.
I will say these guys set first of all, they throw the best event I've ever been to. You're going to get gourmet food because Mark does all the cooking, and it's an exercise in, you want to throw a perfect fucking event? Come to this thing. And I still have I remember actually writing with Mark one of the exercises about elbowing someone in the face in a fight. And I still use that sentence in talk after talk after talk after talk, how many years later. So people listening.
And you're coming, right?
I'm coming. Yeah, I'm flying out to Santa Barbara.
Awesome.
People listening. If you can get to this event, get to this event. I've been to it, I think 3 times now. And it's not oh, wow, it's the same shit as last year. It's developing story. It's hearing people's stories. It's watching people freak out having to go from 5 sentences to 1 and then being oh my God, I can't believe they can't do that. And then getting up there and be but wait a minute, my 5 sentences are perfect. Why is everybody looking at me like this? So yeah, if you guys can get to that event, please do. The Kymberlee's contact information, strategicsamurai.com. Before we sign off, I would just like to express my heartfelt and sincere, overwhelming gratitude to you. My life is radically different in every possible way. Your influence, this podcast exists. Both of my TED Talks exist. Every way that I speak to people and tell stories and do business is shaped by you. And you came into my life when I needed someone like you so badly, and I had no idea at the time. So on behalf of everybody who listened tonight and got unbelievable value out of what you shared, And personally, especially, thank you so much for being you. Thank you so much for sharing in the ways that you do and giving in the ways that you do. It is, you have my whole heart. Thank you.
Oh, well,
Everybody,
that
please.
means the world. Thank you, Traver. That means the world. And I want to thank you for what you're building and what you're doing, because our world, like I said, it needs leaders right now. And thank you for doing the heavy lifting to get this movement started, that you are, I mean, just unstoppable. And I can't wait to see what this grows into. So it's an honor to be a part of it. And it's an honor to share some tidbits with everybody here on the call. Thanks for joining us. This is my life's work. And I just love talking about this. And if I can be of service to anyone in the future, reach out anytime.
Thank you. And so before we sign off, guys, I'm going to I think there's someone specifically on this call who's been begging me for my year name. And so, Melina, this is my year to let the levee break. So I've been giving pieces of Led Zeppelin songs to Melina all week. I want the Uncivilized movement to be a flood throughout the country, if not the world. Because as I said, I see men in pain every single day, and I see women in pain because of men who are in pain. And so I am actually doing what is hardest for me, and I'm going to ask you guys for help. If you know men who are struggling, send them my way. If you know people who are struggling, send them my way. If you know people who can come on this podcast every Thursday night, send them here. This is grassroots. I'm sitting in my, like someone saw the photo of what's actually going on here. This is starting from the ground up. Send people to me. Send them to manuncivilized.com. Send them to my Instagram, or just say, hey, here's a guy who may be able to help you. This week, I've talked to people who are addicted to opiates, who are suicidal, who are cheating on their wives. And it is an honor to actually take those calls, and I'll continue to take those calls for as long as I have to until this shift actually happens and men start being more of the solution than we are the problem. And I will leave you with, thank you so much for all of your time, your energy, and your attention tonight. I know that you all are here voluntarily. I love you all. Thank you. And please go be uncivilized. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Kymberlee.